Okay, so as we begin, what we're going to discuss today is less technical and more mindset. The most effective marketers are experienced and they think in a particular way that is very different from how the average business person thinks, or just how the average pastor thinks. And I think one way that we can see this is by looking at sort of what we would say the top 3%. You see the top 3% in every area of life. You see the top 3% who, what do you want to say, function in the power of God, living in the Holy Spirit power. You see 3% of the people making the most financial wealth. You can see the 3% of the people making the most businesses that are successful. And it just comes from a particular way of thinking. And that's what we're going to talk about today. The most effective 3% of marketers, they all think the same way, and it gets them results. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And the first sort of overarching category that I want to discuss with you, and we're going to borrow this from a book, and this book is one of my favorite business books. It's The 4-Hour Workweek. It's by a gentleman named Tim Ferriss. He's a very gifted businessman, very gifted marketer. Now, we're going to discuss this both ways. All of these have sort of an effective way of thinking and an ineffective way of thinking. And so the effective way of thinking to begin, we would refer to as a ready, fire, aim way of thinking. And so that would be the effective way of thinking. The ineffective way of thinking would be ready, aim, fire, which seems much more intuitive. So I want to address the effective way of thinking first, the way that's going to get the most results here for First Assembly. So in ready, fire, aim, what we do is we begin getting ready to offer a product or a service. In the case of First Assembly, we're going to offer a service that meets a deeply felt need. If you'll remember, that's like the core of everything we've been discussing. How do I meet a deeper need than I met yesterday? Because that's how I'm going to get more response. And so we're going to get ready. And the way we get ready is we're going to create what's called the minimum viable product. Or in, again, the case of churches, minimum viable service. So if you want to offer a ministry of some kind, we're not creating every detail and every aspect. We're not creating it perfectly. We're not trying to get it right the first time. We're creating the bare bones, what would be considered as a full service. Not perfect, but good enough that it does what it's supposed to. We can do it in a very small amount of time, and then we can quickly get it out to the people who are going to tell us whether or not it meets their need. Because I don't know if it meets their need. They tell me if it meets their need, and they can't tell me till they have it. Now, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get ready, and we're going to create this minimum viable product or service, And then we're going to launch that product or service out to our desired audience. You'll remember our target audience is here at the top. That's who we're going to take it to. And then what we're going to do actually here, before make adjustments, I need to add this to the slide, but we're going to ask for feedback. What do you think about this? It's not fully complete, but does it meet your need? And if they say yes, then we're going to add to it. Then we're going to keep building it. We're going to perfect it. If they say no, well, how should it meet your need? So we're going to get feedback, and then after we get feedback, we're going to adjust. And so this is where we're aiming. So we ready ourselves, we create the minimum viable product, we fire it out there to our audience, even if it's not perfect, and then we aim, we take shot after shot after shot until we hit the bullseye, and we take those additional shots with the feedback from our audience. Now, this is how the most effective marketers do marketing. The alternative to this is ready, aim, fire. And this is what most people are comfortable with. And in ready, aim, fire, we ready ourselves and we create a product or a service. But we kind of perceive in this way of thinking that you've only got one shot. I'm gonna put this out there, and it's gonna pass or it's gonna fail. It's gonna be a success or a blunder. People are going, and so what we do is we create it, and we keep creating it, and we try to perfect it based on our own understanding of what would be good. And it takes a really long time to get it to our audience. And then So moving up to this, it takes a long time to get out. Maybe we get nervous. A lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people creating a product or service, they get nervous. Oh man, what if they don't like it? I've put all this effort in. I could be rejected. And then they quit. Sometimes they'll pull the trigger. They feel like they've perfected it. They've put years of work into it. I shared with you, I wrote a book in my early 20s on behavioral psychology. Major flop, did not work. I targeted the wrong audience and there was no response. And I felt like a failure because I put all the time into perfecting it and then turns out nobody wanted it. And so that's a major problem because then what happens is we launch our perfected product because we've aimed forever and then we're really disappointed. We feel like a failure and then we quit. So all of the ready, aim, fire ways of thinking inhibit us from getting good results. Okay, so effective marketers think ready, fire, aim. Any questions on that before we move on to the next slide? So now each of these kind of sub-modes of thought as we continue, these are going to fall within either the ready, fire, aim or the ready, aim, fire. And again, ready, fire, aim, that's what we want to do. We don't want to do ready, aim, fire. It slows us down and it reduces results. So marketing is dynamic. This is experienced marketers know that marketing is dynamic and it is changing all the time. Now, what everybody agrees on, and we'll just use a website as an example. If First Assembly wants a new website, it takes time to build that website. There's a setup time. And everybody agrees on this. Now, what the experienced marketer knows is when that website goes live, maybe it takes a month to build. When it goes live, the experienced marketer knows that website is not done. It's dynamic. It will continue to change over the course of its life. Now, many inexperienced marketers think that marketing is static. I'm going to build this website, I'm going to turn it on, and then it's completely done. I'll never touch it again. And this is what, I don't know if you guys have ever been and you've looked at some websites and you're like, man, this thing looks like it was created in 1995. The colors are weird. It's just not relevant. There's no events on it that are current. Nothing is changing. It's static. And this comes from the viewpoint that we're going to have someone build the website and then it's done. And this is the same thing with, make sure I'm on track here. Yep. This is, before we move to this slide here, this is the same thing that you can do with a ministry. If you design a new ministry and in your head when it starts, you're done designing it, what if it doesn't meet the need as soon as you offer it to your audience, right? Then that's not good. But if we can continue designing it after we've launched it, well, now you can continue refining and making that more effective forever. And that's what we want. That's what effective marketers are doing. One example of this in terms of dynamic, and I'll give you an example from what I do every day. I make pages. They're called landing pages. And the landing page is a web page and there are no buttons on it whatsoever except the desired action. So there's no buttons to the home page, there's no buttons to social media. You can leave the page and click the X button, or you can sign up and give me your information. That's the convert. So there are whole web pages just for this. And the only thing I want them to do is sign up. So it's like, if you'll remember last time we were talking, Pastor Scott, here, I'll give you a free Coke if you sign up, right? Sign up right now and give me your information. And what we do is I'll start this page, and I'll start a page, and I'll start running people to this page, and it will begin at maybe 1 out of 100 people signing up. And most people would go, oh, it's a massive failure. Marketers don't think like that. What we say is it's dynamic. So I started the page, it's at 1 out of 100. Now how do I get it to 2? How do I get it to 5? How do I get it to 10? And then after 3 or 4 or 5 months, it's hugely effective. And then everybody else looks at it and they go, how did you do that? I started mine and it was at 1. Me too. Me too. And so we're going to continually change as we go. Now, the second kind of way of thinking here, marketing is an integrated system. Now, integrated means you got multiple pieces working together. And this is opposite of what most inexperienced marketers think and what they see, and you'll see this in your notes as well. They think marketing is about a silver bullet, there's this one super secret strategy that if you could just find it, then everything would just work great. And in the church right now, this is Facebook. If you had a live stream on Facebook just the right way, if you did advertisements on Facebook just the right way, if you had posts, something about Facebook is magical. And if you got it right, your church would go viral, you'd be a mega church, you would have tons of people, you would lead everybody to the Lord, the whole world would be saved. This is kind of the thought process that I find with a lot of Christian churches, and Facebook is the key. And this is a silver bullet. Now, in reality, marketers that are experienced know there are multiple phases to this, and every phase has to work and do its part, okay? Now, to give an example here, to continue with Facebook, if we go over here and we look at this marketing funnel, Facebook falls up here. So let's say your tech team is doing some kind of Facebook post, and let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's say that silver bullet was as effective as it could have possibly been. Let's say it got 5 million people on your Facebook page, and they're all really excited, and they're on there, and they're looking at this really great post. It doesn't actually accomplish anything, because in order for this to work, the Facebook up here in the Connect off of your website, we have to get them to your website and get their information. Otherwise, they're not your audience. So if we forget to put the button on the Facebook post that just got 5 million people, we got a whole bunch of excitement. We got a whole bunch of people saying, wow, this is great, and then nothing happens. Nothing happens because marketing is an integrated system. So each part has to work together. An example of this from my life, and I did reference this last time I was here, when I wrote that book, I had this post go viral on this site, and it got like 75,000 views over the course of a weekend. So there was all this hype, all of this excitability, and I forgot to put a link to the book. So I sold exactly 0 books. Nothing happened, right? And we do this all the time. So marketing is not silver bullets. We have to have an integrated system. Every piece of that funnel has to do its job. The Facebook has to generate the views and greet the new people that we don't know. Then we bring them to the website. We've got to get signups. Then in the close, there's someone following up to build relationship and say, come to church, come to encounter. Every part has to work together. Okay, so experienced marketers think in terms of degrees of success, and this is really important. I see this often with nonprofit organizations, and this is counter to a pass-fail way of thinking. And so you'll see that this is sort of an overall mindset. When you have someone who comes from a ready, aim, fire mindset, which is not what we want to do, this is ineffective, we see pass-fail thinking because we're readying ourselves. We want to make sure it's exactly the way it should be before we let anybody see it, because what would they think? We've only got one shot. Well, if we've only got one shot to get this right, we either pass or we either fail. This is especially the case is because if I'm only going to put that together and I never change it, if that marketing is static, if I put that page together and I throw it out to people and only 1 person in 100 signs up, and I'm never going to change it, it did fail, because that's really ineffective. So if I'm thinking in terms of ready, aim, fire, I'm going to be very effective. I'm going to feel like I either really, really passed or really, really failed, and that's not effective. On the other side, the experienced marketers think in degrees of success. And so when I launch a page and I want to get signups, I expect that it's going to start at the lowest point because I'm guessing, what is this person's need? I don't know what their need is. I'm guessing. And the faster I can get their response, the more quickly I can increase my degree of success. So marketers expect to start low and slowly build up the effectiveness of our marketing strategies. Yeah, so we expect the results to underperform at the beginning, and that's not a failure. If I start out and I have this page and its goal is to get emails and I only get 1, that's good. It's not a failure because I'm going to keep changing it. It's dynamic. I'm going to continue seeing what the need is I can meet, and then how do I get 2? That's more success. How do I get 3? That's more success. And then in terms of online traffic, it's really not that hard to be very successful. If you get 15 out of 100, you are the best marketer in the world. Those are the numbers. And so how do we get from 1 to 15? We go to 2, 3, 4, and they're all successful. One's just more successful than the other, and we just take failure out of the equation altogether. Now, pass-fail thinking results in low or no desired action. Because if I feel like I launched this page on the internet, or you launch a ministry and only one person shows up, well, this is a failure. I should be embarrassed. So what do? We quit. We get discouraged and we quit because, that's obviously not helpful to us. So when we think of, okay, starting point, we knew it was going to be low. How do we get better? That's encouraging because we know we've started and we can continue moving forward. So on your page in this right here, you will see the question 1 there. What else comes in degrees of success in your ministry? You can even put in your life. And I'd like you to write that in. And I'll give you an example as you're writing this. How many of you in the room are parents? Okay, quite a few. Okay, great. So as a parent, how many of you were pass-fail thinking when you got your child a bike and you told them, here's your bike. If you don't get on this and ride it the very first time, you are a failure and I am throwing it in the trash. It's ridiculous. We don't live like that, right? It takes time to learn a skill, and marketers know this, and we expect when we try something new and complicated, whether we're launching a new ministry, a new product, a new website, whatever it is, it takes a lot of tries and iterations to get the need right so people resonate with it and do what we want them to do, okay? So we get on the bike, we fall off, we skin our knees, and every time we learn, oh, I shouldn't lead to the side, so I'll lean to the middle. I shouldn't take my foot off the pedal, and we get a little bit more effective every time. So as we continue, you can just write in there, what else comes in degrees of success in your ministry? Okay. Marketers are imperfectionists. We do not like perfection because there is no marketing system that ever gets 100 out of 100. If I'm a perfectionist, I'm not going to be a marketer. That funnel over there, 100 come in at the top, and what do you notice about the top? The top is bigger than the bottom. 100 go in, 100 never come out. You might get 1 out the bottom, or 2 or 3, and that's okay. Because if I can get 3 out the bottom and I put 100 in, and I know that happens every single time, if I want to get 100 out the bottom, I know exactly how many I have to put in the top. You see what I'm saying? So getting a small result is not a big deal, but what I can't do is I can't get perfect results because I would have to be a perfectionist, and it's really impossible. So marketers are imperfectionists, and what drives our decision making is not what I think about the thing that I'm creating, it's what the other person thinks. I'm not receiving whatever ministry you're creating, you're not the consumer of the ministry. So you're not the person who ultimately decides if it meets a need or not. You might have an opinion, but my opinion when I create a web page is largely irrelevant. The question is, do the people like it and do they engage with it? Because if the answer is no, then my opinion was just probably wrong. And so here, feedback determines what is not effective. What this means is, as we mentioned earlier, I want to create, if I'm going to offer a new product or a new service or a new ministry, whatever it is, minimum viable product. I want to get the bare bones of that idea together so it functions enough to get the idea across, and I want to know what someone else has to say about it. Now, setting the system up correctly, if we're trying to perfect it before we ever let anybody see it, the really, really crazy thing that most people miss is that perfecting the system doesn't necessarily give you good results, okay? And so as an example, I worked with a Christian organization, built out their whole marketing funnel, built them some really complex systems, and I said, let's launch it out there so we can start making those revisions so we can get feedback and we can start optimizing and changing it. They said, no, we can't launch it. And I said, well, why? Well, because we have to review it. We have to review it for grammar. We have to review it for branding and punctuation and spelling, and everything has to be perfect before we put it out. And you know how long it took them to review all of this? About 3 months. And in 3 months, I could have spent $30,000. They had a grant that Google gives and Google gives free advertising, $10,000 a month to nonprofit organizations. They could have spent $30,000 and had 20,000 people through to their website telling us what they liked and didn't like instead of us guessing. So we spent 3 months making it perfect, and we launched it, and nobody liked it because the spelling doesn't meet the felt need. Nobody cares about spelling. I've got like 3 typos in here, by the way. I saw those, and I'm like, okay, I can't be too upset about it. But yeah, the spelling, the punctuation, the branding, nobody cares about that. So you can make it perfect, and it still won't work. But if you have typos, and you happen to find out that their deepest felt need is they're struggling with finances and they want to have a Christian financial course, they don't care about your typos. They'll sign up 15 out of 100. You'll be super successful. So we just want to get to that point faster. Question 2 here. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit ahead. On your paper, what do we sometimes expect to have perfect in your ministry before we take it to people? What do we expect? Do we expect to have things perfect a lot of times before we take it to people for fear of what they might think if it's not good enough? So maybe write some ideas in your own ministry there on question 2. Now, I shared with you personal experience. One of the ways that you can keep your efforts imperfect, because the question is, if I struggle with making it all perfect, how do I keep it imperfect? Like, it's just right or it's wrong. How do I do that? So the 80-20 rule, you have a whole page of this in your notes. By the way, if you look at your notes, the 80-20 rule will be in the marketing psychology, how marketers think. In here, you have a whole page on 80-20. Now, the 80-20 rule was sort of thought up by a gentleman named Pareto. It's called Pareto's Law. And what it says is that 20% of your input gets you 80% of your output. And this is incredibly important. I organize my entire career around the 80-20 principle in terms of what I spend time on. This means that 20% of my inputs get me 80% of my outputs. That means 20% of my effort gets me 80% of the results. So if I want to create a new ministry, a new product, a new service, and I want a bare bones minimum viable product that I can crank out in one day, 20% of my time is all it takes to get the 80% of the result. And if it doesn't work, here's what I can do. It took me 20% of time to see if I met a need. I can try to meet needs 5 times in the time it would take one perfectionist to try to meet one need. So I can test and see, what do people need? And I can give 5 shots in the time someone else has 1 shot. And that means I can meet needs much more quickly and much more efficiently. And this can also be applied, you'll see in your handout as well, this can be applied to your time. 20% of the time you put in something gets you 80% of whatever you put your time to. 20% of your ministries bring in 80% of the new visitors. So if you can figure out, and you look at the numbers, I know Pastor Andrew's going to be talking about numbers this afternoon. If you can track the numbers and see which ministries bring in the most people, you can say, we could get 80% of the new people and save 80% of the time just by knowing the numbers. So if 20% of your ministries gets you 80% of your incoming people and you are too overwhelmed with things going on, you can legitimately stop doing the other 80% of the ineffective ministries and still have the 80% coming in from those 20 ministries. You see what I'm saying? Highly, highly optimize your efforts and your time. And what you can do then is you can reinvest the time you just spent by eliminating the ineffective ministries and putting it into the ones you know work, because they're way more effective. So now you get exponential growth just because you know what 20% is giving you 80% of the results. Okay, great. One example of this, I recently launched 2 digital courses to church leaders and nonprofits online. If you imagine doing college online, the platforms are very similar, just to kind of give you a mental idea. But this training is one of them. Now, I launched this training into sort of the online course area where pastors are and nonprofit leaders are and business people are. And right now, and this is in terms of meeting needs and in terms of 80-20, what's more effective? Right now, I launched this. The last time we were together, I launched this out, And it looks like I've got a 3-day window to kind of get this launch. It looks like it will be somewhere around 1,500 student signups in 3 days, okay? Which is great, Now, I launched a different one over the weekend. And this one was about that grant, that Google grant. They give $10,000 of free advertising every month to nonprofits. That got over 7,500 signups in 3 days. So they're both great. But it seems like the course about the Google grant is meeting a bigger need than the course to church leaders on marketing. Now, that's not to say this isn't important, but of the two courses, if I have an audience of 7,500 on one that came in 3 days and an audience of 1,500 on the other, which one am I going to prioritize the extra effort to perfect? The one that's got the largest demand. It met the biggest need. And it kind of makes sense, because you have nonprofit organizations that have not, it's coronavirus. There has been no help for nonprofit organizations, grants for businesses, not for nonprofits. And this Google grant is one thing that they can use to help support them. So it makes sense that right now there is a huge demand for that. And I had no idea when I launched that could be the case. But after I saw the numbers, I said, what would be causing this? Oh, it's meeting a really big need. That's why I have more signups. And I wouldn't have known that unless I just tried two. If I had only tried the one, I would have only gotten the results of one. So use the 80-20 principle when designing ministries and trying to find people's deeply felt needs. Marketers are 100% others focused. This can be tricky with nonprofits and churches especially, because they say, well, the whole reason I'm here is because I want to help people. That's the whole reason why I'm here, and I completely agree. However, when we start doing marketing, all of a sudden it becomes all about us. And this is referencing the client that I was discussing the last time I was here. And she says, well, yeah, I'm going into these nonprofit groups, and I'm saying, if all of you just gave $1, if you just gave $1 to me, I could feed all the children. Right? And I said, you got kicked out of those groups, didn't you? How did you know? How did you know I got kicked out? Well, because you're requesting things of people. It's about you. And if it's about you and they're not winning, it looks like spam to them. It looks like you're asking them to lose. You lose and I win, and it becomes about us. So experienced marketers are only worried about meeting needs more effectively. And so unskilled marketers will make requests. I'd really appreciate it if you could do this. Please donate today, right? I know it's really hot out, and I know we're laying brick at the church, but we're looking for volunteers. Would you like to help? This is all about us. You lose, so I win. Now, on the other side, skilled marketers are interested in just meeting needs, and we talked last time. You meet needs 2 to 4 times more than you ask for, and that makes people feel cared about. That makes people know you're not just in it for what you're getting out of them. You just love them for them. And so with skilled marketers, what we do is we set up the system. The desired action is the ask that we will make. We set it up. We know where it is. We're going to be talking, Pastor Andrew's going to be talking about this afterwards. What is the call to action in your ministry? Each one of your ministry falls at a different place on the first assembly strategy, and that determines what you ask people to do. You might be asking them to come to Encounter. You might be asking them to come to church. You might be asking them to become a missionary or to do School of Leaders or whatever it is. Your ministry has a specific one. Once you know what that is, you know that you're going to ask for it, and then you forget about it, and you just meet needs. And then when that moment comes up, and you've met all the needs, and it's time to ask, then you just ask. But you weren't thinking about it at all. You were only concerned about the well-being of that person and helping them and meeting needs. This is what effective marketers do. When we make the request, because we do make a request, but only after we build the relationship, we build the trust, we meet that deeply felt need. Last time we talked when Jesus is going out and he's like, oh, to the blind man, what can I help you with? The blind man said, firstly, he got feedback there. I don't know if you guys saw that. He didn't just try to meet a need randomly. He said, what is your need? And he goes, I'm blind. And then he met the actual need, if you recall that. What if he healed the blind man's back pain? He's like, be healed of your back pain. And the blind man's like, well, this is nice, but I'm blind. You missed it, right? And so we want to meet the right need. Now, when we ask, we already know what it is, we forgot about it. When we ask for them to meet our need in response, We're not making a request because it's not about us. What we're doing is we're telling them all the reasons it's actually good for them to do this. And this is how you sell it. This is how you do sales. If I am going to, I told you I worked in furniture sales. If I'm going to sell a couch for $10,000, I don't say, why don't you give me $10,000 and I'll give you a couch? $10,000 for a couch? Really? That's a lot. That seems like a lot. What you do is you say, this is the most comfortable couch. This couch has Tempur-Pedic material in it, trademarked, and it'll solve your back pain. And this couch will last for at least 10 years. So this is like just buying a cup of coffee every day. It's really not that much when you think about it. And you tell them all of the benefits. And by the end, this couch is awesome. It really is an awesome couch. Okay, it's $10,000. Let's go check it out. Let's go buy it. And they go, I mean, it's a cup of coffee a day. My back pain's going to be gone. And they're focused on all the reasons it actually benefits them, and then the price doesn't look so high. And this is exactly what you do. And I see you laughing, but this is really what they teach you to do in sales. This is literally what they taught me to do in high-end furniture sales. In ministry, I know you guys have been doing flooring somewhere. I know we have volunteers coming for flooring. The ineffective way to ask for this is, hey, I know that it's 6 o'clock in the morning, but we really need help putting down new flooring. Could you come over here in the heat of the day and help out, please? We'd really appreciate it. That's me focused. Meet my need, and I don't care about you. The really great way to do this is, oh, hey, yeah, I was thinking about you. Some guys and I are getting together at the church. We're doing some volunteering. We're going to bring in pizza. We're going to, get manly. We're going to get some stuff done. We're going to have a good time. And then afterwards, we're going out. We're going to go out. We're going to grab, if you said coffee to me, I'm in. I don't care what I'm doing, We're going out afterwards. And I'm like, wow, that sounds like a great idea. Yeah, I'd love to come. What are we doing? We're laying brick. Okay, I'll be there, right? Because you've just sold me. I get relationship. That's my need. And if you meet my need bigger than the thing you're asking, I don't really care what you're asking about because I'm winning more than what I'm giving, okay? So that's how we make the request. So unskilled marketers make the request, but it's not a win for the other person. And we're going to look at that in the very next slide here.